The feelings are not to be feared. They're just energy. It's all energy. And it's just to not be afraid of feeling those intense emotions because they can shift and move. It's about honoring the depth and feeling all of it and knowing that there's going to be a lot of healing and laughter on the other side.
Welcome to Flip Your Script, the podcast about life's critical turning points and how people find the inspiration and motivation to move forward and rewrite their unique stories. Flip Your Script is produced by Media Minefield, a public relations firm passionate about the power of sharing stories. Specializing in earned and social media, Media Minefield helps clients take control of their unique story and message. The show is hosted by Christy Peel, founder and CEO of Media Minefield, who flipped her script from an Emmy-winning journalist to a successful entrepreneur and speaker.
She's a published writer for Vogue, LA Magazine, and The Observer, and is a successful female entrepreneur. What makes Aubree Nichols' Flip Your Script story so intriguing is she doesn't shy away from any part of her story. In fact, she shares it all. Eating disorders, addiction, divorce, to how she's building an empire, inspiring other women to move from self-loathing to self-love. Aubree, welcome to the show.
Oh, thank you. So good to be here. It's such an honor. What a great way to start the week.
That's right. So you are in this space. I want to start where we are now and kind of work our way backwards.
Yeah.
So self-love is something that you talk a lot about. You have a giant following on social media. And it's one of those terms that I think people get confused about what that means. And it's sort of a buzzword. So I'm interested in you explaining what it means to you and what you're trying to do by talking about it.
So you're absolutely right. It's a great question. What is self-love anyway? And why does it matter? It is all the rage, hashtagged on Instagram, often paired with self-care. And for me, the best way to describe what self-love is to differentiate it from self-care. And what self-care is amazing. It's taking care of your physical, your financial, your spiritual, your mental health, your intellectual, your sexual self, all of those components. And where self-love really differs is it's all about your emotional well-being. It's all about your innermost self, that essence of you that you probably don't share with the world most days. And the way that you can tap into knowing what your innermost self wants, that's what self-love is. And when you practice self-love and you ask yourself, okay, what is best for my emotional well-being? Then I argue that all of the physical, the spiritual, the financial, mental, sexual, intellectual pieces all fall into place because you're giving your heart what it needs in that very moment.
So start with self-love, work on that, which is a lot of work. And then the other pieces kind of come from that, flow from that.
Yeah, absolutely. Like if you were to, according to the world that we live in, self-care is being a girl boss. It's Monday. It's getting your workout on. Meanwhile, I'm sitting here in my pajamas. It's almost 2 p.m. And my innermost self, the most loving thing that I can do for myself is stay in my pajamas all day long, just shuffle around the house to watch at least 2 hours of TV, because I never do that. And the only way that I would ever, get to that point was number one, listening to my burnout meter going, Aubree, slow down. But two was just to really tapping into that voice and to listen to it. And that's what I really need to do. And it is the most loving thing that I can do. And we can talk about how to cultivate that relationship with that inner voice, because that actually is where the work is.
And to get to a point where you are self-actualized, perhaps enough to be thinking about self-love, usually means that you start from a place with something that isn't quite so amazing that needs work. and you're using self-love as almost a healing tool to something that's off. So let's talk about where you started. You mentioned burnout, and I mentioned some things when I introduced you, and you're very open about all the things that needed some more healing and needed some love. And you weren't alone. You're not alone. Many people, all of us, are dealing with some things. They're not open to talk about it. So how did you get the courage to talk so openly about some of your struggles?
You're exactly right. I have had so many struggles. I've experienced so much darkness, starting at the age of 6, where I looked down at my thighs and just thought that they were too fat. Growing up in a home with a mom as a personal trainer and exercise nutritionist, my dad was really active, 2 sisters who experienced wicked eating disorders. I went from that track to addiction with drugs and alcohol, to unavailable men, to really finally walking down the aisle to a man who I thought who could love me for me. I had all the monies and the cars and the homes and the dripping in pink diamonds. And at 38, I was, wow, the most miserable version of myself. I couldn't even look at myself in the mirror. So I come from a real history of self-loathing. So for me, it was a matter of life or death. Like, once I left the marriage that was suffocating my spirit, it was the matter of, do you want your soul to live this like half, like partial existence, or do you want to really lean into your best self and become the woman that I've always wanted to be, or that I know that I was placed on this earth to be, the woman of my dreams? And part of that, Christy, is what you asked, is vulnerability is my freaking superpower. The universe handed me all this struggle, all of this pain. And the only thing like that I could imagine, that the reason for all of it, was so I could come into this world and really share about it and say the things that other people couldn't say, that they were struggling with, and make them feel less alone. And yes, indeed, by sharing those things, there was so much healing. There's been so much healing in the process.
And what was the catalyst for you to decide, okay, today's the day I'm going to tell someone. Today's the day I'm going to be public about this? Or have you always been fairly open with the things you're struggling with?
I've always been fairly open with what I've been struggling with, but the energy behind it has been very much a victim, disempowered, fix me, save me, damsel in distress mode. When I growing up in my family of origin, that was the way that I got love. So I was taught that in order to get loved, I had to be on the floor, breaking down in tears. So that's the way I learned how to share my pain. There was a shift, and that was in my marriage. I was like 36, 37, 38, where I started to share myself on Instagram and realized that, wow, people are really resonating with what I'm saying. And it was a desperate call for help. It was a desperate call for, please get me out of here. I'm channeling my energy, on this platform with a bunch of people who I don't even know, because like I'm struggling here. But it was through seeing the reactions and the responses and the DMs that were like, hey, Aubree, we really need to know what you're talking about. We want to hear more. And even like yesterday or a couple of days ago, I shared like a very heartfelt photo of me crying, being exactly where I was, which is like really suffering in this same and isolation of quarantine that we're in. And the response again reaffirmed of where my power is. And it's reaffirming to know that that's where my power is, but it's also really scary because who wants to enter the world like wide open all the time? But when people need that, and I think that they do now more than ever, that message that I share or that I bring into the world that says like, hey girl, you are not alone. Your anger, your fear, your tears, they all share a purpose. And by expressing them, they will move on and shift into happiness, joy, some other more positive good vibe type of emotion, then I think that I'm seeing that that's where my power is, and that's where I need to be coming from. Does that make sense?
Totally. I'm wondering if that's a lot of pressure, because that means that if your superpower is vulnerability and making sure people know they're not alone, then when you're struggling, you must feel some pressure to share that, which would be hard, I would think, but maybe not.
It's a
Maybe
huge
that's,
amount of pressure.
yeah.
It's a huge amount of pressure. And so I think, and I was just talking to my therapist, it's like, I feel the weight of the world because I've got this story. I'm working on these books. All my articles. I mean, I do some reported articles, which are not about me, but my best writing is the one that comes from my heart and my soul. So where I'm at in my process and turning that feeling of feeling the weight of the world on my shoulders is just being really super compassionate with myself, but also reminding myself and reminding my audience and my readers that it's not, the feelings are not to be feared. They're just energy. Because I'm not afraid of the writing, but historically, I have been afraid of those intense emotions that come up when I put myself on the page. But the emotions that we're going through, especially now, and that waves that we're writing, it's just energy, right? It's just energy that may start out as tears and anger and rage. Just Sunday, picked up my Bose speaker. I'm feeling so stuck in this Groundhog Day of life that we're in. And like, as a creative being, I need movement and novelty and people and tribe. And I threw it against my wall and I broke my mirror. Like, it's intense, but that energy is mine to work with. That can also swing way far on the other side and be in like intense joy and elation and exhilaration, excitement. So it's all about like reminding myself and, and if you're listening, that it's all energy. And it's just to not be afraid of feeling those intense emotions because they can shift and move. It's about honoring the depth and feeling all of it and knowing that there's going to be a lot of healing and growth. I mean, and laughter on the other side. It's in the pent up. It's when we get pent up and stuff it down that bad things happen.
And what I love about your particular journey and why it fits so well into our mission here is because when people make a change from addiction to healing to sober, whatever those shifts may be, there's a perception that now we're good, like check and we're good. And the important piece in all of that is the in between. The how did you get from one place to the other, and to be really honest about saying, it's always a struggle. And you've conquered some things, but that doesn't mean you're conquered and that it's all fine. And from here on out, she lived happily ever after. That's fairy tale. And that's a lot of what is out there on social media is this, even if there is a struggle talked about, it's talked about how I mastered it and moved on. And yes, you can have a good day, but there's also going to be a bad day. So I appreciate how you're honest that you're not, and I'm using air quotes here, fixed, because there's no such thing as that.
Not for me. There's not. I think, and I would be bored if I was fixed. There's part of me that really thrives on the agita and the tension. And what you said like really stuck out for me about like this being the journey is the destination, right? And one of my coaches says that often, and it resonates for me right now because I think what I have mastered or am working on mastering is my innermost dialogue, or my inner mean girl, as I like to call it. Or if you're a guy, it's your inner critic, call whatever you want it. It's those tapes that are running in the background, those thoughts that are not me. And the way that I've realized that is by doing extensive journaling all the time, meditation, being able to see that those thoughts are outside of me. And so, for instance, right now, my level of self-hate and the the self-talk that's happening when I look in the mirror has been really intense lately. So what I'm able to do is like witness that, wow, that's really important data, because those self-loathing tapes and thoughts are super strong right now. So like, what's going on? Like, because that is just a proxy. That was just a coping mechanism for me at a very, very young age, back to being 6 years old in that kindergarten bathroom. For I have an emotion that is so intense that I can't deal with it. I don't know how to deal with it. My mom can't handle with me dealing it like in this fully expressed way. So I'm going to look in the mirror and turn it in on myself. So, what that means is it's data, right? So I am becoming more like adept at recognizing those tells of like when I'm really feeling an emotion that's so strong and powerful that I'm afraid to face it. So I'm sort of, instead beat myself up, because that's like tried and true. Been there, familiar, easy. Yeah. So I think that in the self-love journey, part of getting to know your innermost self for me has been able to meet myself in the page via like pen to page journaling or in the silence and meditation, and to really understand what's happening on the inside.
And to identify a lie for a lie. So if those
Mm.
negative narratives are going on in your head, you can believe it, or you can dig in and decide, where is this coming from and why is this there? And is it true? And why do I believe it's true? And all of the work that needs to happen. But if you don't call it a lie, then it's truth. And that truth, believing hateful things about yourself, will kill you from the inside out.
Oh, 100%. I mean, in PS, those tapes, if we want to look at the tapes that aren't serving us, the ones that are lies, I mean, thank you to my parents and my parents' parents. Those are just tapes that our parents passed down to us, that we picked up around the age of 4, and we just carried them throughout our life like they were truth. And I love saying this: if you want to see what someone's been thinking, take a look at their life. And it's so true, because we may not all know, but our thoughts create our emotions, and then our emotions dictate our behaviors and our actions. And then if we look around, we've created this whole life. And if you were to look at my life, in the past 35 years, it was based around this idea that I am not enough and I need things on the outside to complete me and to acknowledge me, give me acknowledgement, give me worth. And that still is such a struggle. That is my work, right? Is to understand that I am enough without my balayage highlights, without my Botox, without working out, without any of these headlines that I'm getting, without a best-selling book, that I am enough as I am. That's going to be the work till the day I die.
So hard. It's so hard. And what also makes me pause for a minute as you share your story, and it is intriguing to me. So you're getting DMs from people as you're sharing your story who you don't know, who are sharing their story with you. And it's so unfortunate that they don't have, and we as a society don't have strong, healthy friendships and people in our tribes around us to have those conversations with, that they're sharing things they wouldn't share with their best friend with a stranger, because it's not healthy, it's not safe, it's not whatever. And that is sad.
Okay. So I wonder if I could reframe the word sad. I don't know if it's sad. I think that as someone who right now is having therapy twice a week and rebuilding this idea of what connection means to me, I've had such a skewed, avoidant, anxious attachment style that I too have gotten so much connection, quote unquote, and I wouldn't call it bad, from Instagram. And, right now I'm in LA. I've been in LA a little over a year, most of which we've been locked down. And I'm struggling to rebuild my tribe, and sort of, I've had a couple fallouts on who I thought would be my tribe, and they're not my tribe. They're not the right people. And again, once again, I'm really turning to Instagram for that. Like, so, I mean, I have a couple, like my best friends and my family, right? But it's like, I always say, go where the love is, not where you think it should be. And I experienced that firsthand when I was getting sober 16 years ago, and I was going to AA. I'm not in AA now, but I'm still sober, but I just chose a different way. But I remember thinking, God, I'm such a loser, going to these meetings, going to this fellowship afterwards. And listen, I didn't have any other option. Like, you know what I mean? So I would say, go where the love is, not where I think it should be. And I would go and I would get the connection, and I would feel seen, and I would witness other people and their struggle, and I felt better. So I think right now, where we are with COVID and the isolation and the messed upness that we're feeling, I want to say, like, wherever you're getting connection, as long as it's not hurtful, as long as it's not hurting you, I don't know, go there. Like, yeah, that's kind of where I'm thinking, but I'm really struggling with that. And how do I get the connection that I need in a place where it's like ad hoc? It's so difficult right now.
It's a really good point, because social media does get so much hate by so many people. And there certainly are plenty of value of it. And I think, to your point, you're building your tribe online and you're looking for human connection in person, really difficult to do right now. And you are modeling online connection in a vulnerable way and encouraging people to have human connection, also valuable and important. And that is, I mean, with this podcast as well, if someone hears something and feels like, okay, now it's safe to share my story with someone else, that's a win. Because if we all were more open about our struggles and our past and how we got to where we are, perhaps then we wouldn't have the depression and there's so many issues, mental health issues with people, even who are afraid to ask for professional help. And you mentioned that going through life is not a solo journey. Therapists, friends, Instagram, like whatever it is not meant to be done alone.
No, it's so not. And I think it's, the pain right now has been like, I call my team, I have my team of angels, and it's like, I don't have a lot of room for them to not deliver in part. And it's hard because a lot of them are paid. Like, we have to get support right now. And I just noticed that you say, like, there's a saying that you're only as sick as your secrets. And partially it's just being seen. It's just being heard. So there's such power in that. So I start to notice, like, when I share very deeply on social media, and yes, it does feel like a weight. Sometimes I just want to, like, post a smiley pic and get on with it. And I will, I'll do both. I notice there's a domino effect of people that I see who start sharing where they're at in their struggle. And that's good news for me. I love that, because I start to witness. I mean, I'm a researcher in my real life, I'm a consultant. So I start to notice those data points. Okay, that's really good, because they're getting healthier by sharing, fully expressing their selves and where they're at and their truth. And I think that's really important, because we're in this society where it tells us to keep it in if it's not happy and smiley. And social media, to some extent, it's a really good point, Christy. It does reinforce that.
And you mentioned earlier about you're worthy, you're enough. And I think that is something that women, particularly, I can't speak, I've never been a man. But however, you hear more women talking about it, that they struggle with imposter syndrome and I'm not enough and I'm not worthy. And I think that transcends to their stories. My story doesn't have value. My story doesn't have worth. My past doesn't have value. And I think that keeps people from sharing because they feel like they're not worthy to share it, or it just isn't that important. And when we hold them in, we're shorting someone else to benefit from that story and someone else to find the commonality and the healing. And that's what your openness on social media has done is that it says my story has value, my path has value, my journey has value, and so does yours. And you're welcoming them in.
Yeah. What was really present for me when you were just speaking just then was that I think that's where the struggle, or why I've felt so strained on social media lately. It's because I'm telling myself this lie that I got to be picture perfect, when in reality, I myself am struggling by putting my words down on the page, thinking that I have something to say, right? It's like, I mean, for me, when I sit down and write, give myself an hour or two and connect with myself in that way, it's the greatest act of self-love, the highest form of self-love for me and how I'm wired. I get up from the table, my feet orient on the ground differently when I give myself and connect with myself in that way, whether it gets published or, whether it never leaves my notes on my phone. But I think for everyone who's listening is to figure out like what your code is, like, where do you find the most peace? Where do you feel most alive? Where can you go, or what can you do to where everything else like just slips away and you lose time? And then to try to figure out like, how can you do more of that? It's really important.
Because when you do more of it, you feed your soul. And when you feed your soul, it can feed someone else's soul. But
yes.
A hungry soul can't help anyone.
That's right. Oh, it's very true. It's very true.
So you mentioned your writing, you mentioned some of your consulting work. What fires you up and gives you, we talked about self-love, but what career-wise, path-wise is next for you? And how can people connect with you?
Well, so I actually right now am just working through edits on a New York Times style feature, which I'm very excited on female entrepreneurship. So very excited about that. I'm working on a memoir titled Enough, rightfully so, how I stopped searching, starving, and striving and became the woman of my dreams. So look forward to that sort of end of this year, probably beginning of next year. Also, yeah, I need to mix it up, whether I'm a Gemini or who knows. I need to multiple things, but definitely me and writing is way too much isolation. So I like to have multiple projects going on at any one time. So just doing a lot of podcasts. Yeah, I'm exploring Clubhouse, starting to host some rooms on Clubhouse, which has been really fun. And just, being in the discovery of like, again, where do I feel most alive? Because I think there's a slight reinvention of how that looks in our new radical new normal.
Are you surprised at how your message has resonated with people? Because you have a lot of followers.
I guess I'm surprised at like how real the kind of followers I have want real talk. And so if I serve them up anything else, it's like they're not interested. So I guess I'm surprised, and just I want to understand like how I can continue to serve them and serve, me becoming the woman of my dreams, and just how I can continue to like exercise or maybe hack my creative muscles and what I need to be like most effective and most authentic so I can continue to be that person in the world. I just don't want COVID to take my power away. Do you know what I mean? And I've given it, well, rightfully so. It's been a deal. So I want to figure out from here on out, like how I can COVID hacks, how I can unbreak my brain in a way.
Because of the isolation.
And the lack of momentum, the lack of people. I mean, for me, like Nora Ephron, everything is copy. There's this movie, but I mean, it's like my writing is born from my interactions with people, not only intimate interactions, but strangers. I love that about living in New York. So not being out and about and not having and having that muscle really dormant of like, I can just go out to the coffee shop. LA is now open, but it's about reminding myself on the daily. And I argue it's putting a schedule down like way in advance. So I just have those places that I'm going, and they have to be somewhat different, but it's a routine of novelty that, yeah, I'm going to be able to crack it and get back to myself. But I think a better than ever, Aubree.
And I think it's important how you connected that back to what we talked about earlier, which is identify what your struggles are first, and then figure out how to share them with someone. Yours is public. Figure out how to share them, and then figure out how to move past them. It doesn't mean you finish them, but you said, for you, it's writing down, calendaring to force yourself to break the cycle. And it can be something that little. It doesn't have to be this giant. And then my documentary film is put out. I mean, that's, people think that the hack is something so big, but for you, just writing down, I'm going to a coffee shop at 12 o'clock tomorrow. That's significant. That's a really tangible, helpful hack for people, I think, who are struggling with all the things we're all struggling with right now.
Yeah, it's a structure thing. For me, I don't know where I end and where I begin. There's not much to push off. So it's like, I'm lucky I have an admin. So just sit down with her, schedule stuff out. And but listen, I struggled with this even before COVID. When I didn't have a schedule, I was not happy. And because there's safety within structure for me. I mean, that's true for all children, right? You need to give them rules, boundaries. And so the most important thing, if you guys are listening, it's like, maybe I want to put down a schedule for myself. And it can be skeleton, it can be loose, but schedule in a conversation with a friend, a way to move your body, a way to get your brain smiling, something creative. Maybe you go to a different grocery store. But the most important thing is you show up no matter whether you feel like it or not, because you're not going to want to feel like it. I mean, you're probably not going to feel like it. That's the most important. Take the emotion out of it. Like, just get your body into the motion of doing it, and then you'll find the gifts. Because right now, people, I'm also developing a program called Stoked, which is designed to help people working from home get unstuck. So how to ignite their creativity and productivity mojo, get them passionate about anything again, really. And it's about doing it anyway right now, and then within that, you're going to find joy, you'll find self-esteem, a newfound sense of confidence. And that's what's really important.
It's do it. Don't talk about it. Schedule it and do it.
Just do it. Yeah.
And I suppose your social media audience keeps you accountable, because if you went away for a few days, or you decided, I'm not going to post for a while, people would wonder what was going on with Aubree, because you've made your audience part of your accountability.
Yeah, I think to some extent. I also think since my engagement has dropped off. So I definitely have a handful of people who check in, where have you been? But again, for me, the social media thing is just do it. It's like, for better or for worse, it's like, this is this thing that I've built, and it's realizing that I have something to say and to give back, and to just do it anyway. I think that's a really good point. Because in my head, I'm like, oh, it doesn't matter. But it does. It does matter. It matters for me, and it matters for the people that follow me, and for the people who are in their life, right? Because it has this, we all want to elevate ourselves, to elevate our mood. And so it has a ripple effect.
And how many times do you post something and you get a message from someone, or someone comments, that's just what I needed to hear, or you had no idea? I mean, that is all the affirmation you need. And maybe you should take some of those comments and put them by your computer.
I know.
What I'm going to say is going to help someone today. I better say it.
Yeah, that's very true. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. It has been such a joy to talk to you. And I want to wrap up with the one question that I ask everyone, which is there a quote or something that you've held onto that has helped you on days that are difficult, as you are continually in the process of rebuilding your journey?
Yeah, I love this one. In the end, everything will be okay. If it's not okay, it's not the end.
Ooh, I like it. Say it again.
In the end, everything will be okay. And if it's not okay, it's not the end.
And do you use that? Do you tell yourself that on I don't know if I'm okay.
I am today, as I'm okay. Now I'm still in my pajamas at 2 p.m. Yeah, it's not the end. It's just the middle of this beautiful, beautiful, imperfect, messy life that we're all living together in a more real way than we ever thought imagined. So no, it's not the end. That's not the end of anything. Hang tight.
It'll get better. Well, there were so many truth nuggets and valuable insight that Aubree shared with us. A couple of things that I took away from it. Don't fear the feelings. There's value in vulnerability. Figure out what fuels you, and that's probably where there's self-love that can be explored. But pay attention to those things. Go where there is love, wherever that takes you. And remember, you are enough. Your story is enough. You have value. My hope is Aubree's story empowers you to believe you're capable of more than you think, to discover motivation, to uncover inspiration, and to find the strength to turn the page.
Thank you for listening to Flip Your Script, hosted by Christy Peel and produced by Media Minefield. If you like our message, please be sure to give us a 5-star rating, subscribe to the show, and share our episodes with your family and friends. Do you or someone you know have a story about flipping your script? We'd love to share it. Contact us on our website, flipyourscriptpodcast.com. To stay up to date on all things Flip Your Script, make sure to follow host Christy Peel on social media. You can also check out the website for pictures, resources mentioned in the show, and other great episodes.